What is going on, UFC card lovers? Welcome back here to another episode of UFC Card Talk. My name is Damien, and here at UFC Card Talk, we talk about everything to do with UFC cards, from collecting to investing, and also recent UFC card hopping news. This week's episode, I have another UFC card community conversation for you guys, and it is my man on Instagram at Third World Card Collector. Me and Cedric sat down. He is a UFC card collector from the Philippines. We talked about his collecting journey, living in the Philippines. We talked about the type of cards he likes to collect and why he likes to collect those UFC cards. We also talked about tips and tricks for people, how to keep to their card budget. We talked about a lot of other different things. I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. Cedric is actually a fellow content creator. He's taking a bit of a break from content creating, but you can check out his YouTube channel. He does have some cool videos for you guys to check out if you haven't already. I will have a link to his Instagram and his YouTube channel linked in the description, so be sure to check those out after the video. Now, with all that said, let's get to the conversation. What is going on, UFC card lovers? Welcome back here to another episode, another UFC card community conversation. And this week it is with my guy, Cedric from Instagram. He is the Third World Card Collector all the way over there in the Philippines. He also has his own YouTube channel for you guys to check out. We're going to be talking about all this as another fellow content creator. Super excited to talk to him. Cedric, how are you going?
I'm good. I'm good. How about you? I'm really excited, although kind of nervous, like I've said before.
Yeah.
But yeah, here we
Yeah,
are.
we were
I'm
just
looking
having,
forward to it.
yeah, obviously I was like we've talked a little bit before on Instagram. I've watched your videos on YouTube. I think a lot of them are really great, and I would urge people to check them out if they haven't already. I know you were getting started with your content creating and you've had to take a bit of a pause, but we can obviously life gets in the way and we can maybe talk about that if you want. But yeah, obviously it's always fun for me to do these sorts of things and talk with people. And I think maybe we're a little bit in common like that. Being international card collectors, we probably have a lot in common. So I just thought we could have a great conversation and put it out there for the community to listen to.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. Let's talk about our experience outside from the US.
Yes.
I'm ready for that.
Yeah. Those guys don't know how they don't know how lucky they have it over there in the US. But anyway, we'll get to it. But let's start off. How and when did you get into collecting UFC cards?
Uh, actually, I, let, let's talk about how first I got to watch UFC into UFC.
Okay, yeah, we can
I
start there.
actually got I actually got into UFC for around 2012, so like 10 years. I'm like high school at the time, and there's a bunch of uh, replays of UFC events on TV, so I just have to watch, and I got really hooked. If you didn't know, Philippines is like a basketball country. We don't have much sports, although we do have it, but basketball and maybe boxing is one of the most famous sport here in the country, and there's not much to watch. So when I watched UFC, it really stuck in my heart. It's like an adrenaline rush watching the UFC events. So, and here how I look at it. We don't have football here. We don't have soccer. So I'm really just into NBA before. So when I watch like pay-per-view events like UFC 290 and stuff, I look at it like we have like our own Super Bowl playoff every month. It's a different experience for me. So it really got it to me. Like it's our instinct when we see like two two dudes punching each other out. But yeah, it that one got hooked to me. And in terms of cards, I really started on the COVID start of the pandemic. There's a bunch of YouTubers, Filipino YouTubers that caters NBA cards, and I really was planning before to start collecting NBA cards. I'm a decent fan of NBA, but when I did my research, I found out there was actually UFC cards. So I had to like research, watch some YouTube videos, and there's really not much content out there except for like Macy collectibles. So Macy collectibles actually did a lot for me starting out collecting UFC cards. So that's why mostly of my stuff is really I do believe is like mostly Topps cards as well. So he really influenced me a lot into collecting. So yeah, I really got back just the same as others. I don't have really cool background on how I got into UFC cards. I'm just maybe just the same as the others who got into during the pandemic days. But that's how I started this thing.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you obviously gave a quick shout out to Chris at Macy Collectibles there, because I was going to ask you, just obviously watching some of your previous videos, I have noticed with your mail days, you do like have predominantly more Topps cards. And being someone myself too, I do like some Panini products, and I do have some in my collection, but I also probably have a higher percentage of Topps cards. So I did notice that, and it was going to be a question that I was sort of going to look at asking you as to, you know, where did the interest or the preference in the Topps cards come from? But you've obviously just answered that in your own with coming from Chris. So that's very interesting to hear. And
Yeah.
shout out to obviously Macy Collectibles, as you mentioned, he was, if
Yeah,
not
we
the
miss you. We miss you, Chris. We miss you, Chris.
yeah, he was one of the first guys that I know of, and actually the first that I ever saw. But obviously, I didn't come into the hobby until late 2021, early 2022 myself. So when I started looking at content, as you mentioned, that hit really him, and I think that was when Joe was just getting started with his UFC card content as well. And then obviously it's grown now more into other guys, including myself. But so hopefully we're, as content creators, we're helping scratch that itch. But obviously maybe that's what inspired you with your own content, was to start making videos, as you said.
Yeah. My plan before was to. It's like a selfish act. I was planning like making a YouTube content for my Filipino community, if there will be, because for me, if we can grow it as big as we can, it would be easier to get more cards. It will be easier to sell cards. Everything will just follow. So I decided to like just put out content. Maybe some of my Filipino people can maybe watch my video and maybe inspired to join the hobby if they're really into cards and or into UFC. So that was really my plan initially. But yeah, eventually I encountered that it's really hard to put out content consistently, especially if you have lots of going things in your life. But yeah, it's that's what's my plan, to put out contents. But yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully in the future I can continue doing some videos, but we will see.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned at the start, I think you had, and especially that like beginner's guide that you did one part for it, and I think that was a very informative video that you did. It might have been late last year, early this year, but yeah, that was a really great video. And as I said, I actually encourage people, if they haven't seen that, just to rewatch that video, and you might learn something that you maybe didn't know. But that's a great segue as well into a question I did want to ask you. Do you have like friends or other people that you know of in the Philippines who are collecting UFC cards? Obviously, you mentioned that basketball card collecting is not, obviously not massive in comparison to what it is in the States, but obviously there is some people in the Philippines collecting basketball cards. Do you know of any other people who are collecting UFC cards currently?
We have like a Facebook group for Filipino collectors, and it's actually around just 500 or 600 members. I do know some of them virtually or through Facebook, but other than that, I go solo. I'm alone in this hobby. I do have some friends who watch UFC, but as far as I know, I'm the only one who collects cards. I do, aside from maybe Facebook friends, because there's a few solid collectors from the Philippines and maybe just others starting up. So hopefully, if we can share this video and others videos, maybe more Filipino can jump into the UFC hobby. We will
Yeah,
see.
yeah, definitely. And you said at the start that it was obviously, it was thinking was selfish trying to grow the community in the Philippines. You see, but obviously that's like the opposite of being selfish. Actually, it's trying to, you know, encourage inspire other people to enjoy something that you're getting a lot of enjoyment out of, which is very cool. But I did notice through your videos, and obviously on your Instagram at Third World Card Collector, you like to prioritize your collection. I'd like to talk a little bit about that. You have mentioned in your videos you do like to collect retired fighters who are now turned commentators. Can you sort of explain that a little bit and the backstory as to why that is a big piece of your PC?
I do PC right now, 3 fighters, Daniel Cormier, Paul Felder, and the only active fighter right now is on my collection is Irene Aldana. The reason why I think I started collecting retired fighters first is there's like a peace of mind for me. I do if they're not fighting and they did have good legacies, it it won't bother me if they're fluctuating much. Because for example, I PC current fighter like Irene Aldana, it somehow uh makes it more for me nervous. I get more nervous when like deciding if I should I sell my cards now or should I keep it. It's a really hard decision. If Irene Aldana won, to be honest, I might have sold some of my cards, but I do planning on keeping it in the long term because I really just love her as a fighter. But for me, it's maybe multiple factors. First, like what I've said, there's like a peace of mind for retired fighters. They're already established. They already did a good part in their job, especially for commentators right now. They're like, even though they're not fighting, their stock can also increase. They can influence more people still, even though they're retired. And yeah, it's more mostly on that side. And aside from that, if you're collecting retired fighters, they as like I've said before, they're already established. They did they won't be you already know what their pick is. Especially for me, when I started like collecting watching UFC, it's like I won't say the old days, but back in the days. So it hits me more when when I see them because I watched them from before, not like more current fighters. I don't have much attachment to them. It's like more on like I feel like a sentimental value because I grew up watching them. So that's one maybe of the reasons why I collect some of the retired fighters.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, as you said, first with the like that sentimental value, almost the nostalgia that you had when you first got into the sport back in 2012 and you were watching their careers unfold. And now, as you said, a perfect example, a fighter like Daniel Cormier, he's a two-division champion. So he already has his legacy established, but now he's basically the top three of the commentators that work the UFC events at the moment, so that keeps him relevant. He also does that ESPN show with Ryan Clark, which is obviously a weekly show as well. That's UFC based. So not only is he working the events, but he's also doing programs on ESPN. So he's, as you said, he's keeping fresh in the minds of people who are already watching UFC, but then people who are going to be coming in to the sport in the future. And then, as you said, that I can definitely see an area for where people, they'll be like, oh, if they're new to the sport, they might come in and be like, oh, who's Daniel Cormier? And then they might look back at some highlights of his career and say he was a two-division champ. So then they get interested and then they want to grab one of his collectibles, one of his cards. So, I think that's, definitely makes a lot of sense to me in strategy from that way. With one of your male days, a perfect example. I was surprised to hear that Michael Bisping that isn't still. Obviously, you said you were collecting Ari Aldana, Paul Felder, and Daniel Cormier. I was actually waiting for you to hear, that Michael Bisping was one of those fighters. But I did see you had a 2013 Bloodlines commemorative coin from Michael Bisping in one of your previous Male Day videos, and it made spark my interest because that's a very unique card. I actually myself really like those cards. And then obviously we spoke about how you do prefer Topps over Panini products. Can you maybe explain just the best way that you can what it is, what features of a card or what aesthetically really sort of makes you want to collect that card in particular? What are the things that you sort of look for when you're out there and looking at UFC cards to buy for the PC?
First off, answering to about the Michael Bisping one, halfway through like the year, I decided to not continue and pursue the Michael Bisping personal collection just because like we've talked in DMs before, and I've told you that I'm trying to stabilize my financial needs because I'm allotting something for it. So that's why I really stopped collecting Michael Bisping. I do have some couple here and there, but I'm not really trying to grow the Michael Bisping collection right now. But yeah, the the main reason why I really love the Panini cards is because I do think, in my own opinion, but Topps cards create more out of the box stuff. For example, you see the coin itself. You won't. I may be a newbie or new to the card game, but I haven't seen any of that on the Panini cards. We don't see the grill. They know I
The
think
mouth
it's
guard.
2013
Yeah.
Topps finest. Yeah. It's out of the box design. So I really love to see it. I'm sometimes I get tired of the same layout design, just the autograph, and you just put the athlete worn relic into it. It seemed like more well thought out when it came to Topps cards. You can see different designs of the. I do believe there's like a booklet itself, the something like that.
Yeah,
It's
booklet.
a
Yeah.
really unique design. Yeah, it's more. I think it's cleaner. The design is cleaner, and it just look like a. It maybe I'm really influenced by Chris from AC Collectibles, but it seemed really clean, really well thought out. Maybe it's like the maybe it's because it's the first few cards that really made it out, but Tops really just hits different for me. It's cleaner. It's way better looking. I think the best Panini card right now are the Immaculates. That's the really one that really uh, stand out to me in Panini, and maybe some of the select, the Zebra, the Octagon side from 2022. The design is really nice, but aside from that, all the good cards are in the tops. No disrespect to Panini or the Panini collectors, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah,
That's
no,
just me.
I definitely echo what you just said. In general about tops, like it's I think like as I continue in this collecting journey of cards, I sort of realize as a collector, like it's fun or it's exciting for me to feel like I'm owning something that is unique. And as you mentioned, with the coins, with the relics, with the mouth guard, with the fistographs that Tops have done, things like that, like have not been replicated since. So knowing that Tops have these very unique cards that we haven't seen since it's kind of cool to know that, you know, as a collector, like you're only one of so many people that actually have this. So that's why it's very advertising for me to search out cards like that. And I think that, yeah, that definitely is something for me that helps sort of round out my collection, is having these items that are just so different from what we're currently seeing. And as you said, no disrespect to people who are collecting Panini, and even it's only because I've done, like, through my own content, it's only because I feel like I've done a lot more research and spent a lot more hours into the cards that I sort of even know these cards exist. So if and when, not if, but when Tops take over the licensing again and start making cards again, I think I've mentioned this before. I think the newer collectors who have come in with the Panini products, and that's the only products they'll know, I think they'll sort of open their eyes up to some of these older Tops cards. You also mentioned, which was a question that I did want to get to you as well, because you do, like me, are a strong advocate, a strong supporter of mentioning about sticking to a budget, and especially for people like us who are international collectors and we do have higher fees when it comes to buying cards. Have you got any tips for people as to, because I think it's so important. So if you have you any tips, or maybe one tip you could give to people when it comes to having a budget for the cards that you buy, whether it's a monthly budget, weekly budget, yearly budget, whatever it is, have you got any tips for people to sort of help maximize their budget into buying the cards that they want?
Uh, I I do can think of a few tips I can say. Maybe first, the first tip I can say is internalize in yourself that whatever you're investing in this hobby is your money that you can lose. Because at the end of the day, I do believe that there's no certainty that we can get back the money that we're putting out. So I think that's the first thing you need to say to yourself. Can you use this amount of money, or maybe can you waste, not really waste, but because you can get like a personal satisfaction, you can get happiness, but realistically, there's no certainty that you can get your money back. So ask yourself first, can you use this amount of money to buy cards? I think that's the first thing I can ask. I can say to the people. And the second is, maybe when it comes to auctions, eBay auctions specifically, there are times where your budget will be tested. For example, there will be a card going around $20 right now, and your budget is around 22. Just your budget is around 22. Don't force yourself to a lot more budget into your card budget, because you what I say to myself every time there's like a really close amount of the, what they call that, the bidding for that card is really close. What I say to myself is that there will be another chance for me to get that card, or maybe a better card in the future. I don't have to pull more money out of my pocket just to get that certain card. That maybe is my second tip when it comes to the budget. And maybe I'll think of a last one to say. Let me think of a good one that I use myself. Aside from what I'd say, this is for myself, what I've done to myself, or maybe in every hobby. Make sure you allot first to what your needs. There will be times where you will be tempted to maybe I can uh pull a little bit of my savings and put it into my card budget. I'm guilty of that. I've done that before. But at the end of the day, there will be a better chance or better ways where you will be able to get the card you want. So you don't need to overspend, get more money out of the pocket. Especially for me, hence my name is Third World Card Collector, because Philippines, I do believe, is a third world country. Because everything, it used to be like a description in my Instagram account, like balling on a budget or something like that. It used to be on my Instagram account, because peso, every peso counts here in the Philippines. There, it's actually, looking at it, it's actually ridiculous how I'm spending so much money into cards, because there will be, every peso is so much valuable here in the Philippines. You can actually eat a good meal here for like $1. That's how the that's how it's really cheap, and it's not really easy to earn money in real life. So yeah, just set yeah, straight out your priorities in life. Make sure that your savings, your bills, everything is paid. Yeah, it's actually, the third tip is actually a little bit ramble, but yeah, those are my tips for the people out there.
No, I think you did very well. Like 3 tips, I think, and they're all super applicable to applicable, should I say, to everyone in the hobby. And as you said, not especially to those in countries like the Philippines, but I think everyone could sort of take a little bit out of all those tips and try and think about them when it comes to having a budget, because as you mentioned, it is so difficult sometimes to not get too ahead of yourself and want to start pulling money out where you shouldn't, like pulling it out from other areas in life. So no, I think they were great tips.
Thanks.
What I did also want to ask you, while we are on the topic of both of us being international collectors, what is one thing you would like to see change in the future in order to help you don't have to speak for myself, but you can speak for just yourself and maybe others in the Philippines. What would be one thing you would like to see from the card companies in the future in order to help card collectors in the Philippines?
Mm. Uh, Maybe I can say like one right now, top of my head. Uh, I wish the cards were more accessible, to be honest, because as I, I hopefully you can relate to me, because every time you order some cards to the US, you'll incur more fees or other shipping fees just to ship it out to your country. Especially here, most of the time it's around 20 to $40 additional that I spend. So hopefully cards company would make it more accessible. Maybe put like a, what do you call that, like a center point in like Asia where you can distribute the cards to the Philippines, because I believe that making it more accessible will make even more people aware that there are such products. Because back in the days, you won't even know that. Me before, I won't even know that there are UFC cards. Here in the Philippines, you can just see like maybe the Yu-Gi-Oh cards, the Pokemon cards in the stores. That's all you can see. And I hope there will be more access to the consumers, because the more people can see the product itself, the more people would buy it, and that's a win-win situation. Win-win for us, win-win for them. So I do hope that it's more accessible, easier, and more accessible to the consumers. That's the only thing I wish, because it would save me a lot of money, to be honest.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. If they can increase the access for people who are overseas, whether it's, as you mentioned, in Europe, where they had a hub in Europe, that a country they could work and have online sales out of, to make just it much more accessible for people who want to collect cards in Asia, or people who want to collect cards in Europe as well. If they had these, just better access to new product, because yeah, it is the same for me as well. It's not easy to obtain product, and if you can, it's super expensive to the point where it's not even worth buying. Like, you're literally paying double the price for blaster and retail products, which double the price what you would pay in the US, should I say. You're paying double the price in the US for, 2023 Don Russ blaster box, which is obviously, as much as it can be fun to open product, it's not that fun when you know you've just paid double what it's worth, and you're also not going to get any good cards that are going to like scratch that collector itch. So while we're speaking on access to products, can you give me your thoughts on the recent 2023 Panini products, Prism, Select, Don Russ, that we've seen so far? Do you like any of them, or what do you think?
As we talked before, I'm not really buying cards right now, so I'm not really make a little bit out of the loop on that stuff. However, I can maybe say that this I really don't love the Select this year. I do think the best Select design that I enjoyed was the 2022 one. However, the Prism 2023, I do think it's a better design than the 2022. I do. I think the 2023 cards I only have is Irene Aldana, and that's all. I really didn't really look at the Panini 2023. I just kept on buying some of the tops, because it felt like maybe more people can relate to me. It felt like super saturated, even though it's like 3 years now. Just 3 years, and it felt so super saturated. I just have to go back and find the rare ones. So unfortunately, I cannot share my thoughts very good on the 2023 products, because I really didn't care much about them, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I have bought recently a Sean O'Malley orange prism from 2023, and thankfully I bought that a couple of weeks ago, so before he won. But I didn't like the 2022, like the 2022, especially for Sean. That was a horizontal card, and I just prefer vertical images. So I haven't touched any of his 2022 products. in the Prism wise, other than a couple. I do have an insert for his fireworks. And then I do really, really, really like the flashbacks or the throwbacks from 2022 Prism. So I will be chasing some of those parallels in the future. But yeah, the 2023 Prism, I did mind. It was another vertical card for Sean, so that was why I picked up the orange. I wouldn't get anything over an orange just because if it's not a gold, which I can't afford, then I'll take the poor man's gold. So I'll take the orange number to 99 instead. And as for Select, yeah, just personally, it's hard for me to really like Select just because of how many different parallels they have. It gets kind of crazy and it just gets too messy. So I try and stick away from Select. And I think I didn't mind, actually. I was a little bit opposite. I didn't like the design. I like the Sean image for 2022 Select with the Octagon side. But other than that, normally Select, the designs for me, they're just a little bit too busy. Like there's a little bit too much going on. So some of the 2023 inserts were cool. Like I did like the global icons being vertical this year. And what was the other one that was everyone was being loving? The color wheels. The color wheels are pretty cool. I'm not a fan of the color blast. I came out of the
I don't like the color wheels, to be honest. I don't like that.
Okay, do you like the color blast?
The color blasts are okay for me. I don't like the color wheel style. The color blast, I'm fine. The color wheels,
well, that's all right. If I ever get a color blast, I'll send it over to you, and if you ever get color wheel, you can send it over to me. We can trade. But all right. What?
Yeah, that would be a good deal.
Yeah. That's all right. I'll still be happy. All right. A question that I always like to ask my guests on these card community conversations. If I was like, Cedric, this chat was absolutely amazing. It really kicked it off on YouTube. I got 10 million views in the first week. I've just made $1,000 US. I want to gift you with this $1,000. But thank you for coming and being my guest on the channel and getting me super famous with my 10 million views. What card are you going to be buying? Or cards? You can spread it out over a few cards if you have anything in mind, or obviously if you want to blow it all on one card, feel free. But what card are you buying if I gift you with $1,000 right now?
Most likely, what I'll do is I won't just buy one card because I think it will be too much for me to spend $1,000 just for one card. But I don't know how much this card goes for. But I would really, one of my goals before was to buy one of the mouth guard card one. So upon checking before, there was like a Daniel Cormier 1 of 1, the grill relic, whatever. So if that's $1,000, I would spend $1,000. If not, scratch that off. I would buy a I think it's a 2017 museum, the framed ones, because I think the museum frames looks super nice. I think it's one of the best cards in UFC ever, the framed looking ones. So I would still buy the Daniel Cormier framed museum. Maybe it's a 2017. I'm not quite sure what the year is, or even I don't really care. Just make it look like it's framed. I'm all for it. And that would be 500, 400. Of the 500, I would probably just complete the Prism of Irene Aldana, or maybe the first autograph of Irene Aldana, the Prism 2022. I would complete the rainbow. How? Yeah. I really just like to collect Irene Aldana. She's my favorite fighter right now. I really wouldn't care if I...
Was Irene Aldana's rookie card in 2021 or 2022?
Irene Aldana's rookie card is actually 2020.
Oh,
Tops.
2020.
I think it's either the flagship or the knockout. I don't really know, but it's hard to find her cards in 2022. 2020. It's really hard to find her cards, so I'm just usually settling into the Prism ones, the Panini ones. It's really hard to find most of her early stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any of her autos yet? Obviously, you said the first year was last year. Have you been able to pick up any autograph cards for Irene yet?
I have like the I do think I have the Mojo 2022 Prism. That's her first autograph card. I have like the silver, the green, and I have the do I have the gold? Maybe the tie dye, the select autograph card, the tie dye. I have almost. I think I just don't have the gold ones and the select 2022 and the one of one. That's I do believe those are the only ones that I'm missing. The one of one and the golds, and I will complete her rainbow. I think I'm not quite sure. I haven't looked at my cards in a long time. They're sitting there, so I'm not really sure what I'm missing. But just a few cards in that select that I'm missing to complete the rainbow, and for the Prism 2022, there's a bunch that I haven't got. It's hard to find the gold, the the green pulsar, the blue and the red. I don't have those. So I just like the select 2022, so I have most of her 2022 stuff.
Yeah. So that's a good question regarding your actual collecting style. Are you going out and actively searching for your PC fighters, as you said, like Irene Aldana, Paul Felder, and Daniel Cormier? Are you actively searching like to complete rainbows for them, or are you just going out and more buying individual cards, the ones that you like the designs of?
Or like before, when I used to buy almost every week, every day, I search UFC Irene Aldana, and then the next UFC Daniel Cormier, and the next UFC Paul Felder. That's my routine. It's like on the suggested. Once I type UFC, all three fighters would come up, and that would be easier for me to search. And all I do is go for like the auction ones, because I think most of the time the auction ones goes cheaper compared to the buy it now price. And for the Daniel Cormier stuff, I just pick. I don't have any prism of I don't have any panini of Daniel Cormier as far as I know. I just completed the Inception. I think it's a 2020 knockout
2020.
or I'm not. Yeah, 2020. Yeah, the Inception autograph. I got the base card, the blue. I think it's out of 25, and the red, which is out of 8. I'm not planning on getting the one of one, and because I don't have the the money to get that one. I'm just happy to complete that one. And it's a similar style to the Paul Felder one. Most of his stuff is really cheap, so I try to buy what I can get. I actually have like three copies of the 20 out of 25 2018 museum autograph. I have three of those cards just because they come cheap. So I used to plan on getting all the 25 out of 25, but at the end of the day, I didn't. It's a bunch of money at the end of the day, so I just stopped at 3.
Yeah, but it is quite fun. Like I do the same a little bit with Yoshihiro Akiyama. Like it's fun to have a fighter who you collect who not really in the limelight anymore and not really having a big following or big collecting base, because you can get like these really cool unique cards, and you're getting them like still some of them still people who have the one of ones or the sapphires, as you mentioned, with Topps Museum that are numbered to 25. Like most of the people who actually have those cards now, they generally know what they have, so they're not selling them for too cheap. But like for the most part, it's quite fun to actually have a fighter who you collect whose cards are like really quite affordable. So you can be buying some of these cooler cards, whether, as you said, they're numbered to 50 or 88, some of the older tops, that they're actually affordable, and it's sort of fun, at least I found, to have a fighter like that.
And that's one of the perks of like collecting the older guys. Most of the people don't even notice the greatness of the past fighters that came. But yeah, I really love. I was planning on collecting the Yoshihiro Akiyama. I was debating because first I used to watch a Korean TV show, so he usually frequents there. So he has really put more, or maybe touched my heart in different ways, if you can say that. He's also in ONE FC, so
Yep.
which is really big in Asia. So I was I was debating on myself if I would increase the PC, but at the end of the day, I really didn't push. Especially, I think he had like a Netflix thing where he was in a competition. So I, I saw like many people were chasing his cards because of it was in the Netflix show or whatever.
I was,
So I really didn't. I said to myself, I think it was the wrong time to collect his card. So I really
that,
didn't collect at all.
yeah, that was me. I watched that Netflix series and I knew of him before, like I'd heard of him before. But after seeing him on that Netflix series, I actually explained this on one of my mail days when I picked some of his cards up. I have a friend back in Australia, one of my really, really good friends, one of my best friends, and like watching Akiyama throughout that series, how respectful he was. Obviously, still fighting in ONE FC now in his 40s, but just his mannerisms, even some of his facial expressions, it was like it's so strange. It was dead set. It just reminded me of one of my best friends, and I was like, so I looked him up. I knew he was an ex-UFC fighter. I had no idea he had fights against like Chris Lieben, Michael Bisping, Aaron
Uh,
Belcher at UFC 100, and I went back and watched all these fights, and he was incredible. I couldn't believe it, and I was like, I was just overtook him. All of a sudden, I went from not knowing who this guy was or much about him to like, I'm like, he's in my, like, literally at the only three fighters that I'm collecting is Sean O'Malley, Max Holloway, and Yoshihiro. So, like, he went from being no one that I knew, even when I started the hobby, to now being like top 3 PC. And as I said, I've had so much fun just like grabbing some of his really cool cards for great prices. So yeah, I was definitely one of those net got sucked in. But no,
I think it's really it's really it's I think it's really crazy how like even though they're not really champions, they can really affect us in some ways. Like so, there are like maybe polarizing characters or fighters that really, even though they didn't become champion, they put something in your heart that keeps you wanting to root for them. That's how I feel for Paul Felder back in the day. Even though he didn't really won anything, he was a badass. How I saw his fights. Even though he really didn't win most of them, he was putting a badass performances. He was doing a bunch of stuff that really made me become a fan. So I think that's the beauty of it. It doesn't really have to be a champion. You you collect what you really love, and that's the cliche of the hobby. You collect what you love. You collect what you like. Collect what makes you happy. It doesn't really have to be a famous fighter or whatever. It just you just collect what you love.
yeah, definitely. Just as we're getting it, you just collect what you're connected to, and like obviously you can't always be in control of who and when that happens, but it's very, very special when it does. I want to ask you one more question. This has been so great. One more question that I also always like to ask my guests, and especially another fellow international collector and another guy who has put time into the hobby, not only with your money, but also making content. What would be one piece of advice you would give to someone who is watching you and I talk right now and is pretty new to the UFC card community? Maybe they haven't had much experience with other sports. Maybe they have, but they're coming into the UFC card community for the first time. What would be one piece of advice you would give to that person?
I think this would cover everything. I think this has also been said by many people before in different videos or maybe on Facebook. Just do your research. I think that's the first. Do your research because I think most of the people who collects now doesn't even know tops exist, and most of the good stuff are in tops. So I think do your research. Make sure you know everything before you buy, because at the end of the day, hard when you regret something that you bought. So make sure you study, do your research. I think this is a better. This one is a better advice. Enjoy. I think that's the best advice I can give. Actually, enjoy, make friends. That's the. I think that's the best. The best tip I can give. is for you to enjoy. Don't stress out too much. I know there's a bunch of people that will give you toxicity or whatever, but ignore them because there's a beauty in the hobby. You keep on uh, enjoying, make friends. I as well. I'm alone. I don't have friends who collect UFC cards, but I'm actually having an interview right now. Who would have thought of that? So make connections, make friends. There's a bunch of people who are good people in the hobby. They're the UFC card father, which is the goat in the collecting. There are very much many good people in the hobby, so make friends. Even though I'm an introvert, I think I'm an introvert. I keep on. Sometimes I comment on videos. I comment on Instagram posts just for to show support, make friends. That's how I try to do it. Is spread positivity and good vibes. So I think that's my advice. Enjoy and have fun. Yeah.
Yeah, once again, couldn't have said it better myself. The fact that you echoed about, even as you mentioned at the start, doing your research, I think is super important for every new person coming into their hobby. And it sounds so cliche, but it really is like something that is going to help you throughout the journey. No matter how long the journey is something that's going to help you. And then, as you said, making connections and how special this is. Like, as I said, without the card hobby, like you and I wouldn't have met. We wouldn't be sitting here speaking for almost over an hour at this point together now. It's absolutely crazy. And I'm very, very grateful for it. And I know you are too. And I really appreciate your time today, Cedric. Before we go, what is the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Uh, Through my Instagram, I daily most of the time on Instagram at third world card third world card collector. If you want to check some of my YouTube videos, you can just search Cedric Manuba or yes, maybe UFC Card Philippines, and you'll see my videos there. So that's it. And before I go, I would just like to ask. I prepared this question for you.
Yeah, of course.
How
Sorry.
does it feel? How does it feel that Sugashan is now a champion? How does it feel? How did the last weekend made you feel?
Well, I pre-recorded a video earlier on in the week that's going to release this week. So it's going to be previous to this video. I did a deep dive on all that, but just in quick re-summary, because people already watched it, I was so shocked. I was when he got the knockdown. It happened so quick. I jumped up off the couch and I was just screaming at the TV, and I was like when he was doing his ground and pound, and it's almost like I couldn't believe what I was watching at the same time it was happening. And I mentioned this too in my little recap that I did. He hit Aljo with a ground shot that he basically took the lights out of Thomas Almeida in their fight. The last finishing shot, he hit him with a like super similar shot. And after he landed that, I knew it was done. I knew it was going to be caught. And like he literally got, I think, two more in. Like Aljo was still sort of moving around a bit, and then the ref called it, and I just threw my hands up in the air, and my partner was on the couch, and I looked at it, and I actually got choked up, and I was just like, he did it. And then I had to I had this overwhelming sense of joy and happiness. And then fast forward to like 10 minutes later, after all the post press conferences, I had to sit down on the couch, and I just felt like I was like I had this massive rush of a high of joy and happiness, and then I had this massive crash. I sat down on the couch and I felt empty. It was so strange. I I've like I support like rugby teams back home in Australia, and I've watched them over like my lifetime win championships and win premierships and stuff like that. But obviously, team sport compared to like individual sport like mixed martial arts like does not compare. But as I said, these feelings of joy, like watching this guy who I've been supporting so strongly for the last 5 years, like accomplish what I've been wanting and wishing for him to accomplish, and what, like, obviously knowing he's wanted it the same all this time. And then for it to actually happen, I was just completely shocked. And then afterwards, I sort of felt a little bit empty, to be honest. I was like, well, what do I do now? Like I've just, as I said, supported this guy so long, and he's accomplished it. Like I was like, where do I go from here? So now I sort of feel like I need to start watching the Contender Series again and find another fighter
Oh yeah, yeah,
just to do start the process over again. It was obviously amazing, but as I said, complete honesty, I don't know if anyone else can relate who've had a similar thing in like fandom, but there was a
yeah.
period where I was just like, I felt completely empty. I was just like, whoa, what just happened? So, which was really strange because I really
That's
thought I
that's
was
why
gonna.
that's why I actually compare UFC to like playoffs or Super Bowl events. It's a different feeling you get. So it's really when it hits you, you can actually jump. You I used to run around when I was younger. I think I ran in shock when Anderson Silva broke his leg against Chris Weidman, if I'm
Mm,
not mistaken. I ran
yeah,
around the room freaking out. It was, although it's a negative emotion, it's high of a negative emotion that I felt at that time. It takes you in a different, like maybe it's in us that it makes us really invested into the fighters, into the fight. I was actually thinking of questions that I can ask you, and I was like, maybe I can ask Damien, what's the best like fight of the year so far? What's the fight of the year so far? And I was browsing the past fights, and I can see there was like a tons of good fights that have happened, and it's just August. So me for myself, I can't decide what's the maybe the fight of the year so far because there's a bunch of good fights that happen. I think from like the Sean O'Malley one, the Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier. There's a bunch of good fights before that came this year. So I'm really excited for the last half of the year. We can see the comeback of John Jones again. We can see Islam versus Charles Oliveira.
yeah.
There's a bunch more. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm really excited. So maybe it's the UFC fan in us that makes us hype, but I'm really excited towards the end of the year.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to think when you were thinking about asking. I'm happy to answer, but I was just like, wow, like put it on the spot. Like as you said, there've been some amazing ones. I would have to, the two that come to mind, which I'm a little bit sad because they're both the same weight division. Obviously, yeah, the recent UFC 292, Sean O'Malley winning. If we take that out of the equation, I really enjoyed, was it Rafael Fiziev and Gaethje I think that was the start of the year, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe in March or so. That was a really awesome fight. And also Dan Hooker and Jalen Turner. That fight was pretty insane as well.
Yeah.
And that's the second time now. Before that, I almost had the vote. Like people had voted Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler as like possibly the best 155-pound fight we've ever seen. But I think a lot of people hadn't seen or maybe forgot about back in COVID 2020 was when Dustin Poirier and Dan Hooker had fought in
Uh,
the Apex. That fight, I think that was 5 rounds too, because that was the main event in the Apex. As I said, it was just a regular fight night. That fight was absolutely crazy as well. That was what I'd voted as the best, almost the best fight I've ever seen. But so yeah, those two, the Dan Hooker, Jalen Turner this year, and as I said, I'm almost positive that Rafael Fiziev and Justin Gaethje was earlier this year. That was a great fight as well. But the one I'm most excited for between now and the end of the year, depending on if Sean fights in December, which he's hoping to, is Paulo Costa and Khamzat Chimaev. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Paulo Costa. I just think he's such a great character. He has such an exciting fight style. If people haven't watched Paulo Costa versus Yoel Romero, back in like 2019, I think that was. Like, if you haven't seen that fight, like go out and
yeah.
do it. That was an insane fight. But yeah, big fan of Paulo Costa. I've actually been thinking about picking up one of his 2018 Topps Chrome cards before the event. But yeah, that's the one I'm most excited for before the end of the year for sure.
Paulo Costa was actually I didn't love before, but right now in his recent fights, I used to now I think I acclimated to him. I can actually enjoy his memes or whatever. I'm enjoying what he posts. There's a bunch of controversial stuff that he posted like last month, but it's actually funny to me now. Yeah, he's actually a good fighter as well, even though he hasn't been fighting much. So I think even though his last fight isn't that good, the Yoel Romero one really stands out. He was actually fighting the architecture of Yoel Romero, his chiseled body. That was a good fight as well. It was a back and forth fight. I think that was his best performance in my opinion so far. I hope he pulls a good fight against Hamzat. We will see if he is actually training well. I think I'm excited a little bit for that, but I'm just a Stipe Miocic, John Jones type of guy. I used to collect base cards of Stipe. I just stopped because there was really no big market for him before. But I'm really excited for the Stipe versus John Jones. I hope if ever John Jones uh, wins, I hope he doesn't retire and fight Pavlovich. Is that his name? I forgot, but I hope he fights him, and that's when he retires. I hope he doesn't retire if he wins because people are talking a bunch of stuff. I just want him to prove again why he is from. It will be a controversial take, but for me, he is the goat. But I hope he fights Pavlovich and he wins, and that would shut the people up. But that's my plan is. If not, if Stipe wins, I'm happy as well. It's a win-win situation for me. I'm a big fan of Stipe as well. So at the end of the day, I'm just hoping that they're not too old because I think Stipe is not 40 plus, 40 something years old, and John Jones is mid 30s. I hope the father time didn't catch to them yet, and I'm just hoping for a really good fight. So I'm really looking forward to that one at the end of the year. And
Yeah.
Singapore next this coming I don't know when you will post it, but this coming weekend I don't sure. The Max Holloway versus Korean Zombie. I'm really excited for that one. I just hope uh, Max doesn't brutalize Korean Zombie and give him like a good proper retirement fight. Uh, if you know, I'm not sure if you know the Filipino wrecking machine, Mark Munoz. He did his last he did his retirement fight actually here in Philippines, and I was not able to attend because I really didn't have the money, but I watched the fight, and it's really amazing if you're able to really show a good performance in retirement fight, just like Robbie Lawler. It's like a really heartwarming moment when you retire and put out a good fight. That's how, if I'm not even sure if Korean Zombie is retiring, but if he's planning on retiring, I hope he does well and put out a good performance.
Yeah, no, I do think it is Korean Zombie, or it's like announced. It's not. I don't know if it's officially announced. I'm not sure if they've done any media. Like they normally do the mid-fight media. So I'm not sure if there's been any interviews this week regarding that. But like from what I've heard, it will be his retirement fight. And as you said, this will be past tense now. But yeah, hopefully Max. I think Max is too good of a guy. He might just sort of, as you said, put the brakes on. I think if he pulls too far ahead, he probably he might feel too bad, so he might put the brakes on a bit. But yeah, it's not so often, unfortunately, like in MMA, that fighters go out the right way, unless your name's Khabib. For the most part, most fighters, they just stick around too long. And like the UFC, they don't protect their legends. They just use them as, well, gatekeepers, as the term is called, in order to promote younger upcoming fighters, which is a sad thing. But unfortunately, it's just time after time, the UFC do that, and they make these older veterans who are slowing down, the reaction time slowing down. They get put up against these young studs who, are just like on the up and coming. And mixed martial arts has changed so much over the past 5 years, let alone 10 years. Like we're now seeing fighters who have trained specifically mixed martial arts since they were kids. So definitely exciting times for the sport in that regard. the talent's just going to keep rising, which will be good as us as fans.
I really don't know any of the rook. There's a bunch of good fighters coming out, and I'm not even able to monitor all of them. There's a bunch of good ones. Uh, Even for the 2023 Prism, there's some good ones that I really didn't know. There's a bunch of names that I'm not familiar. I'm not the fan that I used before. I used to like watch everything, but now I really just try to watch for sure the main event, and if I can, I'll watch the prelims. There's a bunch of up and coming fighters that's really doing well. That's already well rounded. Before we just see the like a one sided just boxer or just wrestler. Now everyone's like a very well rounded uh coming in. So it's a really fun time. So I just hope they just keep on developing, and let we will see at then maybe we will see some what do you call that, inter company fight, just like the Ryzen versus Bellator. I hope we see the PFL versus just the Francis Ngannou one. Just that's the really one that I'm really looking forward to. I hope he comes back or maybe fight John Jones again. I don't think that will happen, but it was such a bummer that he wasn't really able to compete with John Jones and other up and coming heavyweights now. There's a bunch of good ones actually that's still well rounded for a heavyweight. You used to see like a heavyweight that's just like striker power puncher. Now there's wrestlers, there's submission artists. So it's really the caliber of fighters right now is really there if you're looking at.
All right, man. We're just about out of time. But yeah, thanks again. I'll put your Instagram linked and your YouTube channel. I'll have them linked in the description for the viewers who want to check it out. Thank you so much again for coming on. Really, really enjoyed it. And we will do this again too. I'll definitely have you on in the future if you're able.
Thank you as well. It was a nerve-wracking experience, but I really enjoyed. And it's now time for me to hit the bed. It's actually really late now. So yeah, thanks. I really appreciate it. It's actually a new experience for me. So I really appreciate it.
No, as I said, thanks again, and we'll talk soon.